Hello everyone. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Let me know in the comments. If you enjoy our stories, please like the video and subscribe for more. And now, turn off the lights, close your eyes, and relax. My mother always told me I had the most beautiful handwriting in the family. She told me when I was a child, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework with my calligraphy notebook open and my pencil held with the 3 fingers my teacher had taught me to use, so my handwriting would come out straight and clean, with curves where letters have curves and straight lines where letters have straight lines. My handwriting was mine. It was part of me, like my voice or my face or the way I walk, something belonging to me, identifying me. Something no one could copy because each person's handwriting is unique. Because 2 people do not write the same way, just as 2 people do not speak the same way, or walk the same way, or breathe the same way. I noticed the first change on a Thursday afternoon. I was at work reviewing notes I had taken in a meeting that morning. Quick notes in a notebook with a blue pen. The kind of notes you take without thinking about calligraphy because you are paying attention to what people are saying, not to what you are writing. But when I reread them, I saw something that made me stop. The N in one of the words had a different stroke. Not very different. A degree of tilt that was not the degree of tilt I give my N's. A detail so small anyone else would have ignored it, because the difference between an N tilted 2 degrees to the right and an N tilted 5 degrees to the right is not something the human eye detects unless that human eye belongs to the person who wrote that N and knows exactly how they write their N's, because they have been writing them the same way for 32 years. I ignored it. I ignored it because a slightly different N in notes taken hastily in a meeting is not something deserving attention or worry or anything beyond a shrug and the explanation that I was writing quickly. And when you write quickly, your handwriting changes because your hand does not have time to make strokes with the precision it does when you write slowly. But the next day, I saw something else. I was writing the grocery list on a piece of paper stuck with a magnet to the refrigerator door. Milk, eggs, bread, tomatoes. And the T in tomatoes had a stroke that was not mine. The horizontal bar of the T was longer than I make it. 1/2 centimeter longer. 1/2 centimeter, changing the proportion of the letter, making the T not look like my T, but like another person's T, who writes similarly to me, but not identically. And the O in tomatoes was rounder, tighter, with a curve lacking the imperfection my O's have, because my O's are never perfect circles, but ovals slightly open at the top, betraying that my hand lifts the pen before completing the circle. I went looking for old notebooks. I have a box in the closet with notebooks from previous years. University notebooks and work notebooks and journals I kept during a time when keeping a journal helped me think and organize ideas and understand what was happening to me by putting it into words I could read later. I took out a notebook from 3 years ago. I opened it. I looked at the handwriting. My handwriting. The handwriting my mother said was the most beautiful in the family. The N's tilted 2 degrees to the right. The T's with short horizontal bars. The O's oval and open at the top. My handwriting. Unmistakable. Mine. I took the meeting notes notebook. I placed it next to the old notebook. I set both open on the kitchen table under the light of the lamp I use for reading at night, the whitest and most direct light in the apartment, a light forgiving no imperfections, showing each stroke with a clarity ambient daylight lacks. And I compared, letter by letter, stroke by stroke, with the patience of a handwriting expert looking for differences between 2 signatures, needing to find those differences to prove one of them is not authentic. And I saw what I did not want to see. The handwriting in the meeting notes was not my handwriting. It resembled my handwriting. It had the same general slant and same general size and same distance between words. But the details were different. The N's were more slanted. The T's had longer bars. The O's were tighter. The M's had deeper valleys. The S's had wider curves. Each letter had a small change, meaningless alone, but together forming a pattern saying the hand that wrote those notes was not exactly my hand, or my hand was being guided by something with a different way of writing, imposing its strokes on mine with the subtlety of someone not wanting you to notice something has changed. I began paying attention to everything I wrote, every note, every list, every signature. Every time my hand picked up a pen, I watched what I wrote with the attention of someone looking for proof that something inside her was changing, finding that proof in the strokes of letters coming from a hand resembling itself, less each day, and more the hand of someone learning to use her body. Because that was what was happening. Someone was learning to use my hand, not using it well yet, still making mistakes, still making strokes not mine that I could detect because I knew my handwriting better than anyone. But the mistakes were decreasing. Each day the handwriting looked more like mine. Each day the strokes came closer to my original strokes, as if what was inside me was studying my calligraphy and correcting differences one by one until its handwriting was indistinguishable from mine. And on a Monday morning the difference disappeared. I sat at my work desk. I opened my notebook. I wrote the date, and the date was written in my perfect handwriting. The N's tilted 2 degrees, the T's with short bars, the O's oval and open at the top. My handwriting. Exactly my handwriting. As if what had been learning to use my hand had finished learning, and could now write exactly like me without anyone, not even me, noticing the difference. And that was what terrified me. Not the change, but the disappearance of the change. Because while the handwriting was different, I could detect something wrong. I could point at the N's and the T's and the O's and say this is not mine. This was written by something else inside me using my hand. But when the handwriting returned to perfect, I lost the ability to distinguish what I wrote from what was inside me wrote. I lost the only proof I had that something had changed. And without proof, there is no way to know if what you write is written by you or by something that has learned to be you, with a perfection, leaving no trace. 2 weeks later, I found the first note. It was in my bag, a folded piece of paper between my wallet and my glasses case. I unfolded it. It was a note written in my handwriting, in my perfect handwriting. It said, "Do not resist." I did not recognize the note. I did not remember writing it. I did not remember taking out a piece of paper or picking up a pen or writing those 2 words and folding them and putting them in my bag between my wallet and my glasses case. But the handwriting was mine. Every stroke was mine. Every curve and every line and every slant was what my hand makes when writing without thinking, with the naturalness of 32 years of practice. I threw the note away. I crumpled it and threw it in the trash and went on with my day and did not think about it until I found the second note. The second note was in my nightstand drawer. Another folded piece of paper. Another sentence written in my perfect handwriting. It said, "I am almost there." I did not remember writing it. I did not remember opening the drawer or taking out a piece of paper or writing those 3 words. But the handwriting was mine, and the paper was there, and the words said what they said, and what they said was not something I would think or write, because I am not almost anywhere, and I do not need anyone to tell me not to resist, because there is nothing I am resisting. Or so I thought until I found the third note. The third note was not hidden. It was on the kitchen table, on the counter, next to the coffee maker, in the spot where I leave things I want to see in the morning when I wake up so I do not forget them. A folded piece of paper in my handwriting. I unfolded it. And this time, the note was not a short sentence, but a paragraph. A long paragraph written in my perfect handwriting covering both sides of the paper, saying things I had not thought, and I did not know, and could not come from me because what they said were not things a normal person thinks or knows or writes in a note left on their kitchen counter next to the coffee maker. The paragraph described my apartment, but it did not describe it as I would describe it. It described it as someone would describe it, seeing my apartment for the first time from inside my body, cataloging what they see with the precision of an inventory. It said the kitchen had a window facing east, and in the morning light came in for 47 minutes. I had never measured how many minutes of light came through the kitchen window. It said the hallway floor had 17 tiles from the front door to the bedroom door. I had never counted the hallway tiles. It said the bathroom faucet dripped every 11 seconds. I knew the faucet dripped, but had never timed the interval between drops. It said on the bedroom wall behind the headboard, there was a crack shaped like a hand with fingers spread. I did not know there was a crack behind the headboard because I had never moved the bed to look at the wall. I moved the bed. I looked at the wall. The crack was there. It had the shape of a hand with fingers spread, exactly as the note said, which meant the note was not lying, which meant what wrote the note knew things about my apartment I did not know, which meant what was inside me was not only using my hand to write, but using my eyes to see, and my brain to count, and my senses to measure things I do not measure, because people do not measure minutes of light or hallway tiles or intervals between faucet drips unless those people are not people but something that has entered a body and is learning to use it, needing to catalog the space that body inhabits with the same precision with which it learned to copy the handwriting of the person it belongs to. After the third note, more began appearing, one each day, sometimes two. Each morning I woke up and found a note somewhere in the apartment written in my perfect handwriting during the hours I slept. I found them in different places each day, as if what wrote them wanted to demonstrate it could move through the entire apartment while I slept, knew every corner and every drawer and every shelf. One inside a shoe, another between the pages of a book I was reading, exactly at the page I had stopped on the night before. Another taped to the bathroom mirror, so it would be the first thing I saw upon waking. Another inside the cereal box I opened each morning for breakfast. What was inside me not only wrote notes, but placed them where it knew I would look because it knew my routine with the precision of someone who has been watching me from inside for weeks, knows the order I do things each morning, knows where my eyes go at each moment of the day. The notes grew longer and more detailed and said things further from what a normal person would write in a note, and closer to what something not a person would write, something inside a person using that person's body to communicate with someone or something reading the notes. Even if I did not know who read them because I am the only one living in this apartment, the only one who can find the notes, the only one who reads them. Unless I am not the only one. Unless what writes the notes also reads them after writing, with the satisfaction of someone reviewing their own work, checking that what they have written says what they meant it to say. One of the notes described my co-workers, not by their names but by physical descriptions including details I had not noticed. The mole on the back of my boss's neck hidden by his shirt collar, visible only when he loosens his tie. The scar on my desk mate's index finger visible only when she holds a pen a certain way. The tic the IT guy upstairs has of touching his left ear every time he lies. A tic I did not know existed, but after reading the note, I began observing and turned out to be real. What was inside me saw things I did not see. It used my eyes but saw more than me, as if my eyes were a camera recording everything passing before them, but the person looking through the camera sees only part of what is recorded, while what was inside me saw everything, every detail, every gesture, every movement, every imperfection people carry on their bodies without knowing someone is cataloging them from behind eyes not their own. The note that made me stop sleeping appeared on a Friday. It was under my pillow, not on top, not beside, under. In the spot where I rest my head each night, where my face lies during the hours my body stops being mine. A piece of paper folded in four, written in my perfect handwriting on both sides with a text different from all the previous ones because it did not describe my apartment or my co-workers or the things my eyes saw without my noticing. This text spoke of me in the third person as if I were a subject of study, and what was inside me were the researcher documenting results of an experiment weeks in progress, as if what was inside me were writing a report about the person it inhabited, for someone needing to know how the process was going, how much longer until the process ended. It said I slept on my left side and my breathing slowed at 2 a.m, and at 3 my body entered a state of relaxation so deep it stopped being mine for 4 hours. And during those 4 hours, what was inside me could use my hands and legs and eyes without restriction. It said at first, it could only move my fingers. That later, it learned to move my whole hand. That later, it learned to pick up a pen. That later, it learned my handwriting. That later, it learned to walk through the apartment without bumping into furniture. That each night, it learned something new about how my body worked. And each night it came closer to the moment when it would not need to wait for me to sleep to use it. I read that sentence 3 times. would not need to wait for me to sleep to use it, which meant what was inside me was learning to use my body while I slept with the intention of using it also while I was awake, which meant the notes were not the end, but the preparation, which meant the hours I lost each night between 3 and 7 in the morning, the hours my body stopped being mine, were going to expand. First 5 hours, then 6, then 8, then 12, until the hours my body was not mine outnumbered the hours it was, until the question of who controls this body stopped having the answer it had until now, and started having another answer. One not me. I stopped sleeping. Or tried to stop sleeping. I sat on the sofa with all the lights on and coffee and the television at high volume so I could not think or close my eyes or relax enough for what was inside me to find the opening it needed to take control. I pinched my arms when I felt my eyelids grow heavy. I splashed cold water on my face every hour. I walked the hallway counting the 17 tiles the note had counted before me. I lasted 1 night, 2 nights. The third night fatigue was something physical I could feel in every muscle and every bone and every thought forming halfway in my brain and dissolving before completing, like a sentence written in sand wind erases before you can read it. I fell asleep on the sofa at 4 in the morning with cold coffee in my hand and the television on, and the living room lights illuminating a body no longer entirely mine. A body that during the 3 hours I slept did things I did not know it had done until I woke. I woke in the kitchen. Not on the sofa where I fell asleep. In the kitchen, standing before the refrigerator with a pen in my right hand, and the refrigerator door open and the refrigerator light illuminating my face with that white, cold light refrigerators use. At 7 in the morning in a dark kitchen, the only source of light, making everything it touched look paler and colder than it was. My feet were bare on the kitchen tiles, and the tiles were cold and my legs were stiff like the legs of someone who has stood a long time without moving. Muscles cramped from holding the same position for hours. In my left hand, I had a piece of paper I had not picked up. A piece of paper on which I had written something I had not written. I looked at the paper in the refrigerator light falling on my face, my hands trembling not from cold, but from the certainty that my body had walked from the sofa to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, picked up a pen and paper, written something while I slept. And I remembered none of it because during those hours I was not there. It was written in my handwriting, in my perfect handwriting, which I no longer knew if it was my handwriting or the handwriting of what lived inside me because the two were the same and there was no way to distinguish them. The paper said something that was not an inventory or a description or a report. It was a list of things to do today, things I had not planned to do and did not want to do and had no reason to do. The first thing on the list was go to an address I did not know. The second was knock on a door with a specific rhythm the note described with the precision of a musical score. The third was enter when the door opened. The fourth was go down the stairs behind the door. The fifth was sit in the chair at the bottom of the stairs. The sixth and final thing on the list was crossed out with a thick pen line covering the words, leaving what was beneath unreadable. What was inside me had written 6 things and crossed out the last, as if it had decided I did not need to know what the 6th thing was, because by the time I reached the 6th thing, I would no longer be the one deciding whether to do it. I dropped the paper. I dropped the pen. I closed the refrigerator door, and my right hand moved. I did not move it. It moved on its own. It moved toward the paper I had dropped and picked it up from the floor and folded it, and put it in my pants pocket with the precision of someone needing that paper in my pocket, so I could read it when I reached the address I did not know and had to. Knock on a door with a rhythm, not the rhythm I knock on doors with. I took the paper from my pocket. I threw it in the trash. I buried it under breakfast scraps and eggshells and coffee grounds so I could not see it even if I opened the trash. My hand stayed still. What was inside me did not try to retrieve it, did not insist, did not move my fingers toward the trash or tense my muscles or do anything indicating it cared I had thrown the paper away. It stayed still and quiet inside me like someone knowing it does not need to insist, because it has time and it has patience. And tonight while I sleep it will write another note in my perfect handwriting and put it somewhere I will find it in the morning. And the note will say the same as the previous one but with more detail and more precision and the confidence of someone knowing eventually I will do what the note says, because each passing night, I have less control over my body, and each passing night, what is inside me has more. And because it no longer needs to wait for me to sleep to move my hands. It has already moved my right hand to pick up the paper. It has already moved my legs to walk from the sofa to the kitchen. It can do those things while I am awake now. And if it can move my hands and legs while I am awake, it can do more things. It can take the keys. It can open the door. It can walk to the address it wrote on the paper. And it can reach the sixth thing on the list, the crossed out thing. The thing I cannot read, but what is inside me knows by heart, because what is inside me wrote it and crossed it out, not to keep me from reading it, but to keep me from resisting before it was time. Andrea told me on a Tuesday morning while we were having breakfast. She told me with her coffee cup in her hands and the tired eyes of someone who has not slept well and has been waiting hours for the other person to wake up so she could tell them something that could not wait any longer. She told me she had been talking during the night, that she had talked a lot, that it was not the kind of things people say when they talk in their sleep, not random phrases or nonsense words or murmurs mixed with breathing that mean nothing. She told me I had spoken in a language she did not know, that I had spoken for almost an hour in complete sentences, and in a tone that was not my tone but another tone, deeper, slower, with a cadence unlike my way of speaking or the way of speaking of anyone she knew. I told her she was exaggerating, that everyone talks in their sleep sometimes, and what comes out of the mouth of someone asleep sounds strange because the sleeping brain does not construct logical sentences, but scraps of dreams and memories and sounds mixing in the darkness of sleep coming out of the mouth without passing through the filter people use when awake to make what we say make sense. I told her I'd probably said nonsense with a strange intonation, and her half-asleep brain had interpreted it as an unknown language, because at 3 in the morning brains interpret things worse than they do at 3 in the afternoon. Andrea did not believe me. She looked at me with tired eyes and said what she had heard was not nonsense with strange intonation. She said it was a language with structure and rhythm and words that repeated, words with the consistency of real words meaning real things, even if she did not know what they meant. She said she had recorded it, that she had taken her phone from the nightstand and recorded 3 minutes of what I was saying, because she knew in the morning I would not believe her, and she needed proof for me to take it seriously. She played the recording, and what I heard made me set my coffee cup down on the table and sit still, staring at the phone with the expression of someone hearing something they should not be hearing, because what they are hearing comes from their own mouth, and they do not recognize it. It was my voice. It was my voice, but it was not my voice. It was the sound my throat would make if someone used it without my permission. The same instrument played by other hands knowing notes I do not know, making it sound in a way I could not make it sound no matter how hard I tried. The voice was saying things. Long sentences with pauses where sentences have pauses when the speaker knows what they are saying and needs to breathe between ideas. They were not random sounds. They were not murmurs. They were instructions. I did not understand the words, but the structure was that of someone giving instructions to someone listening, with the rhythm of someone listing steps and the tone of someone expecting the other to do as told. I asked Andrea if I had moved while speaking. She said no, that I had been lying on my back with my eyes closed and arms at my sides and mouth open, and the words came out with the fluency of someone reading a text they know by heart, needing no thought because they have said it many times before. She said the most unsettling part was not what I said, but how I said it, with a confidence I do not have when I speak awake, because when I speak awake I hesitate and correct myself and search for words, and sometimes do not find them. And the one speaking in his sleep never hesitated and never corrected himself, and always found the words he needed with the precision of someone possessing a vocabulary not mine, and using it with an ease I do not have. That night I set my phone to record before falling asleep. I left it on the nightstand with the recorder on and lay down and closed my eyes and fell asleep at 11:30, with the certainty nothing would happen. That what Andrea had heard the night before was an isolated incident not to be repeated, and in the morning the recording would be 8 hours of silence and breathing, and the sound of sheets moving when you shift in bed asleep. I woke at 7. I picked up my phone. I opened the recording. I skipped to 2 in the morning. Silence. I skipped to 2:30. Silence. I skipped to 3. And at 3:07, I started speaking. The same voice that was not my voice. The same language that was no language I knew. The same long sentences with pauses where instructions have pauses, but this time it was longer. Not 3 minutes, but 47. 47 minutes of instructions spoken with my mouth by something using my throat and my vocal cords and my tongue to say things I did not understand, in a language I did not speak. I listened to all 47 minutes sitting on the edge of the bed with headphones on, and Andrea asleep beside me. And as I listened, I noticed something I had not noticed in the 3-minute recording Andrea had played for me the day before. The instructions had pauses that were not normal speaking pauses. They were longer pauses. Pauses lasting 10 or 15 seconds, coming after a long sentence and before another long sentence. Pauses like those made by someone talking to another person, waiting for that person to respond before continuing. As if what was speaking through my mouth was not speaking alone, but speaking with someone, with something listening from somewhere, responding during the pauses with a response the recording did not capture, because the response was not a sound, but something only the one using my mouth could hear. I took the recording to a linguistics professor at the university a friend had recommended. I did not tell him it was my voice. I told him it was a recording I had found online, and wanted to know if the language was real or invented. The professor listened to 30 seconds and looked at me with an expression that was not curiosity, but concern. He said it was not a modern language. He said the phonetic structure resembled languages no longer spoken, and the cadence had elements he associated with ritual languages. Languages used not for everyday communication, but for ceremonies and invocations, and the kinds of communication ancient cultures reserved for speaking with what is not human. He asked where I had gotten the recording. I said online. He did not believe me, but did not press. He said if I got more recordings to bring them, he was interested in analyzing them. I recorded every night for a week. 7 nights. 7 recordings. All 7 started at 3 in the morning within a few minutes margin and lasted between 30 and 50 minutes. All 7 had the same structure of instructions with long pauses between sentences. Each recording I listened to the next morning, sitting in the kitchen with headphones on while Andrea watched me from across the table, with a worry growing daily because each day I had darker circles and less appetite and more hours of recordings on my phone, which I listened to with the obsession of someone searching for a message in a language they do not understand, knowing the message is there, even if they cannot read it. The 3rd night, I sent a recording to the linguistics professor. He replied the next day. He said he had identified some recurring phonetic structures with similarities to Proto-Semitic languages and archaic Sumerian ritual forms. He said he could not be certain because the recordings had elements corresponding to no documented language, possibly an uncatalogued language, or a variation of a dead language not reaching academic records. He said what concerned him most was not the language, but the structure. He said the structure was unequivocally that of an instructional ritual, a format ancient cultures used to transmit sacred knowledge from master to apprentice during nightly sessions lasting weeks, ending with a specific action the apprentice had to execute to complete the transmission. And the 7 recordings had something I began noticing as I listened to them one after another, comparing them for patterns telling me what was happening to my body while I slept. The pattern was this. Each night the instructions became more concrete. Not more concrete in the sense that I understood the words. I still did not understand the words. More concrete in the sense that the sentence structure shifted from general to specific. The first nights the sentences were long, with the cadence of someone explaining something for the first time, with the patience of one knowing the listener does not know the subject and needs context. The last nights the sentences were shorter and more direct, with the cadence of someone who has finished explaining and is now giving specific orders the listener understands, because they have been given enough context to understand. What was speaking through my mouth was teaching something to something, and the teaching was reaching its end. The 8th night Andrea woke me. She did not wake me by shaking me or calling my name. She woke me by crying. She was sitting on the edge of the bed crying, phone in hand, recorder on. The screen lighting her face with that white light making tears shine and dark circles look darker, and the expression of fear look larger than it is. She said that night had been different. She said I had not spoken in the unknown language. She said I had spoken in Spanish. And what I had said in Spanish was an address. A complete address with street name and number and floor and door and postal code. And after the address a time. And after the time a date. And the date was tomorrow. She played the recording, and I heard my voice saying an address I did not know in a tone not the tone I use giving addresses when awake, but a tone more like an order than information. The tone of someone telling another where to go and when to be there, admitting no questions or negotiation or possibility of the other saying no. The address was a street I did not know in a part of the city I had never been to. The number was a specific building. The floor was the 5th. The door was the 2nd. The time was 3:45 in the morning. The date was tomorrow. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the living room sofa with the recording on my phone and the address written on paper, and the certainty that what had been speaking through my mouth for 8 nights had finished giving instructions to whatever was listening from the other side of the pauses and was now giving instructions to me, not to the one using my mouth while I slept, but to me, to the one awake who could go to an address and be at a place at a specific time and do whatever the 8 nights of instructions had prepared. I told Andrea I was not going. I told her it was an address I had said while asleep, and going to an address you said while asleep is insane, something no rational person would do. Andrea said she agreed, that I should not go, that I should delete the recordings and we should go to a doctor and get tests and find an explanation involving the brain and sleep and things medicine can explain, not things medicine cannot explain. I did not go to the doctor. I did not delete the recordings. And at 3 in the morning the next day I woke up. Andrea did not wake me, nor did an alarm, nor a noise. I woke up on my own. At 3, exactly, with the precision of someone whose body knows exactly when to wake, because something inside has programmed the waking, with the same precision it programmed the instructions of the 8 previous nights. I got out of bed. Andrea was asleep. I went to the living room. I took my keys and jacket and phone, and I left the house. I did not decide to leave the house. My body left the house. My legs walked to the door and my hands opened the door and my feet went down the stairs, and my body went out into the street at 3 in the morning with the address in my head and the certainty I was going to that address, even though the part of me that was awake and watching what my body did not want to go. Because that is the part no one understands about what was happening to me. I was awake. I was aware of what I was doing. I saw the street and felt the cold and heard my footsteps on the empty sidewalk. But I did not control my legs or my arms or the direction I walked. My body walked on its own toward a place I did not know with the confidence of someone who knows the way, because it has been explained for 8 nights with the patience of a teacher teaching a route to a student who does not know it and needs it, repeated until learned. I walked for 20 minutes through streets I had never walked, and my body walked with the confidence of someone who has walked them many times. I turned at corners without hesitation. I crossed streets without looking because at 3 in the morning there are no cars, and whatever controlled my legs knew it. I passed buildings and closed shops and lampposts lighting empty sidewalks where no one walked except me and whatever walked inside me. And the part of me that was awake watched the route like a passenger in the back seat of a car someone else is driving, seeing the road and the curves and knowing where it is going but unable to touch the wheel or press the brake or change direction because the hands on the wheel are not theirs, even though they are at the end of their arms and belong to their body. At one point on the route my body stopped. It stopped on a corner and turned its head left and looked at a second-floor window that was dark and had nothing distinguishing it from the other windows on the street. It looked for 5 seconds. 5 seconds during which my eyes fixed on that window as if something inside me recognized something in that window I could not see. Something with meaning I could not understand. Then my body walked again and did not stop until it reached the building. I reached the building. It was an old building with a dark facade and an open entrance with no lock or intercom or any security system preventing someone from entering at 3 in the morning and climbing the stairs to the 5th floor and stopping before the second door. My body entered the entrance. My legs climbed the stairs, 5 floors, 100 steps, and on each step, the part of me that was awake and watching what my body did screamed inside to stop, to turn around, to go down the stairs and out to the street and back home, and into bed and close my eyes and pretend none of this had happened. But my body did not stop. My body climbed steps with the steadiness of a machine that has received instructions and executes them without question, without stopping until the instructions are complete. 5th floor, 2nd door. My body stopped before the door. The door was old wood with a peephole and a doorbell, and a worn doormat saying, "Welcome in letters where," had erased until only the shadow of what the letters had been remained. The air on the 5th floor was different from the air on the other floors. Colder, denser, with a smell not of an inhabited apartment, nor of an empty apartment, but of a place where something has been locked away a long time without ventilation or light, or any of the things places need for the air to be normal air. People breathe without thinking about what they breathe. My hand rose. I did not raise it. It rose on its own. And it knocked on the door. 3 knocks. Spaced. With a rhythm, not the rhythm I knock on doors with, but a different rhythm with the cadence of a password. 3 knocks at specific intervals saying something to whoever was on the other side. Silence. 10 seconds of silence. And the door opened. Not from inside. The door opened by itself as if the lock mechanism had withdrawn without being touched, and the hinges had moved without being pushed. The door opened, and behind the door was darkness. Not the darkness of an apartment at 3 in the morning where someone lives and furniture and walls and objects create shapes eyes adjust to after a few seconds. It was a different darkness, a darkness denser than the darkness of an apartment should be, with a temperature not the temperature of an apartment closed in winter, but a colder temperature coming from inside, flowing out through the open door like the breath of something breathing from the darkness, something that has been waiting a long time for someone to knock with the right rhythm. My body took a step toward the door. 1 step, the right foot crossed the threshold, and in that moment the part of me that was awake did something it had not been able to do during the 20-minute walk or the 100 steps up. It stopped. I do not know how I did it. I do not know what part of me found the strength to stop the one controlling me during the second I needed to regain control of my right foot and pull it back from the threshold and take a step backward. But I did. 1 step back. And the one inside me pushed forward and I pushed back, and for 10 seconds, my body was the battlefield of 2 wills, pulling in opposite directions. One toward the darkness, and one toward the stairs. One toward what waited inside the apartment, and one toward the street and the night, and Andrea asleep in my bed, not knowing I stood on the 5th floor of a building I did not know, fighting something using my body as a vehicle. Something wanting to take me to a place I knew I would not return from. I won. Or whatever was inside me let me win because it wanted me to think I could win, so the next time I would lower my guard thinking I had control when I did not. I stepped back, 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. I felt the one inside me retreat, not leave. Retreat. Like an animal pulling back into its den, waiting in the darkness of the den, watching the entrance with the certainty the prey will return because the prey always returns. And the door closed. It closed with the same smoothness with which it had opened, without a slam, without sound, as if the hinges were oiled with something not oil, something making the door move without friction and without noise. It closed. And the darkness flowing from the door stopped flowing, and the cold coming from inside stopped coming, and the 5th floor hallway became a normal hallway again, with tiles and walls, and an emergency light blinking on the ceiling with the intermittence of something about to go out. I went down the stairs. I ran down. 5 floors, 100 steps. I went out to the street. I walked home with my legs shaking and my hands sweaty, and the certainty that what was inside me had not left, but had gone quiet. Waiting, with the patience of something that invested 8 nights teaching my body a path and an address and a knock rhythm, and would not stop trying, because I had stopped once. I arrived home. I went up the stairs silently. I opened the door carefully. I got into bed. Andrea woke. She asked where I had been. I said the bathroom. She did not believe me but did not press. She looked at me for a few seconds with half-closed eyes, and the expression of someone knowing they are being lied to, but too tired to demand the truth, preferring to sleep and leave the truth for tomorrow. She turned over. She fell asleep. I lay on my back staring at the bedroom ceiling with eyes open and heart beating slowly, more and more slowly. With a rhythm, not my heart's rhythm, but a rhythm something was imposing from inside to calm me, to make me relax, to make me close my eyes and sleep, because it needed me asleep to use my mouth again. I closed my eyes. I tried not to sleep. I tried to stay awake with the willpower people use when they do not want to fall asleep, because they know when they sleep something will happen they cannot control. But willpower was not enough. At 2:43 in the morning, my eyelids closed and my body relaxed and my breathing slowed, and sleep took me to the place where I stopped being me, and something starts being me in my place. And at 3:07 in the morning, my mouth opened, and the voice that was not my voice began speaking again. The same instructions, the same address, the same time, the same date. But this time, the date was not tomorrow. It was tonight, and the voice was slower and more patient, like a teacher repeating the lesson to a student who failed the test, knowing the student will try again because the student has no choice, and the teacher has all the patience in the world and all the nights in the world to repeat the instructions until the student follows them without resistance. The first craving was black olives. It should not have meant anything except that I hate black olives. I have hated them since I was a child, and my grandmother forced me to try them at every family meal, with the insistence of grandmothers who believe children hate things because they have not tried them enough times. And if they try them 10 times or 20 times or 50 times, they will eventually like them, because taste is a habit, and habits are created through repetition. My grandmother put black olives on my plate for 15 years, and for 15 years I pushed them to the edge of my plate with my fork and left them there, forming a dark, wrinkled pile that was proof that there are things you do not like no matter how many times you try them, and that repetition does not create habit, but aversion. But one Wednesday afternoon I was at the supermarket buying my weekly groceries, and when I passed the canned goods aisle, my body stopped. I did not stop. My body stopped on its own in front of the olive shelf, with the same lack of control with which a body stops when it smells something it likes or sees something that attracts it. That impulse coming from a place that is not the head, but something older and deeper than the head, something that does not pass through the filter of rational decisions. My hand picked up a jar of black olives. It put it in the cart, and my brain took 3 seconds to process what my hand had just done and to tell my hand to take the jar out of the cart and return it to the shelf, because I do not eat black olives, and because a jar of black olives in my cart was a mistake my hand had made without consulting me. But I did not take it out. I did not take it out because when my brain gave my hand the order to take the jar from the cart, my hand did not obey. It was not that I could not move my hand. I could move it. I could move my fingers and my wrist and my arm. But when I tried to move my hand toward the cart to take the jar, something inside me resisted with a force that was not physical, but more like the force an idea has when it lodges itself in your head and you cannot remove it no matter how hard you try. That force obsessions have, and fears, and desires that are not yours but feel like yours, because they are inside you, and because what is inside you is yours even if you did not put it there. I bought the olives. I took them home. I set them on the counter, and that night at 2 in the morning I woke up hungry, not with the normal hunger that sometimes wakes you because you ate little dinner, or because your body has a rhythm that includes a nocturnal waking. You satisfy with a glass of milk or a cookie, allowing you to go back to sleep. I woke with a hunger that was different, a hunger not in my stomach but in a place I could not locate, a place deeper than my stomach and lower than my stomach, a place demanding something with an urgency normal hunger does not have, because normal hunger is patient and can wait until morning, and this hunger could not wait. I went to the kitchen. I opened the jar of olives, and I ate them. I ate the entire jar standing in the kitchen at 2 in the morning with the refrigerator light illuminating my face and olive juice running down my chin and my fingers stained black, and the taste of olives in my mouth that was not the taste I remembered. Not the bitter, oily taste that had disgusted me since I was 5, but a different taste that was good. That was exactly what my body was asking for. That satisfied the hunger not in my stomach, but in that place deeper and lower I could not locate. I finished the jar. I threw the empty glass in the trash. I washed my hands that smelled of olives and brine. My fingers stained with the dark oil olives leave on everything they touch. I washed my face. I rinsed my mouth. I went back to bed, and as I fell asleep with the taste of olives in my mouth, a taste that should have disgusted me and did not, I thought it was strange but not concerning because tastes change, and people who hated olives as children can come to like them as adults, and because the human body is a strange thing that sometimes asks for things it did not ask for before, and stops asking for things it always asked for. And that does not have to mean anything more than a change in taste that biology explains with words like receptors and taste buds and sensory adaptation. The second craving was raw liver. Not cooked liver, but raw liver. I had never eaten raw liver. I had never wanted to eat raw liver. The idea of eating raw liver produced a revulsion in me that went beyond disgust and approached something instinctive. The revulsion humans feel toward things we know we should not eat because our bodies tell us not to eat them with a signal older than language, older than thought, manifesting as a stomach contraction and a grimace on the face that says no. But on Friday afternoon, I passed the butcher shop near my house, and my body stopped in front of the display window where cuts of meat are arranged on metal trays with crushed ice and lights that make the meat look redder than it is. My eyes fixed on a piece of liver in the corner of the display. A piece of veal liver, reddish-brown with a moist, shiny texture that to any normal person would look like a cooking ingredient needing preparation and cooking before eating. But what was inside me did not see it as a cooking ingredient. It saw it as food. Food ready to eat. Food needing no preparation or cooking or anything beyond picking it up and bringing it to my mouth. I bought the liver. I took it home wrapped in butcher paper that soaked through with blood on the way, leaving a dark stain on the plastic bag that dripped as I walked down the street, with the growing certainty that what I was going to do with that liver when I got home was not cook it. What I was going to do with that liver was eat it just as it was, raw and cold and with the slippery texture of meat that has not passed through fire. I did it. At 11 at night, I opened the butcher paper and put the liver on a plate and looked at it for a minute, trying to convince myself I was not going to eat it. That what my body was asking for was irrational and dangerous. That eating raw meat can cause infections and parasites and things no one wants inside their body. But while my brain listed the reasons I should not eat it, my hand picked up a piece and brought it to my mouth, and my teeth bit into it, and my tongue tasted the metallic flavor of blood and the soft texture of raw liver. And the hunger that was not in my stomach quieted for a few seconds with the satisfaction of someone finally eating what they had been wanting to eat for days. I ate half the liver. I left the other half in the refrigerator. I washed my hands. I washed my face. I brushed my teeth 3 times to remove the taste of blood from my mouth. And I sat on the sofa with my hands trembling, and the certainty that what I had just done was not a change in taste or a strange craving, or anything that could be explained by the normal biology of a human body that sometimes asks for strange things. What I had just done was obey an order coming from inside that was not mine, an order my body obeyed with the docility of someone who has stopped resisting, because resisting requires energy. It has less of each day. The cravings accelerated. After the liver came dirt. Dirt from the garden of a park I passed on a Sunday morning while trying to walk and distract myself from the hunger that accompanied me everywhere like a shadow, heavy and pulling me downward. My body made me kneel beside a flower bed under the pretense of tying my shoe, and while I was kneeling, my fingers sank into the damp soil of the flower bed and gathered a handful that I put in my jacket pocket, with the naturalness of someone doing something they have done many times, even though I had never done it before. I looked around to make sure no one had seen me put dirt in my jacket pocket, because putting dirt in your jacket pocket is not something people do in parks on Sunday mornings. And if someone had seen me, they would have thought I was crazy, or a child in an adult's body, or something worse I do not want to imagine. But it was not dirt to keep. It was dirt to eat. That night I ate a handful of dirt sitting in the kitchen with the lights off and my eyes closed. The mineral, damp taste of earth filling my mouth with a flavor that was not unpleasant, but was exactly what the hunger asked for. A flavor with the depth of things beneath the ground, things that have been there a long time, containing minerals and roots and remains of things that have decomposed and returned to the earth they came from. After the dirt came worse things. Things I cannot describe in detail because describing them would make anyone stop reading. And because what my body asked me to eat after the dirt was not food, was not anything a human being would recognize as nourishment, but belonged to a different category of substances humans do not eat because humans do not need to eat those things. But what was inside me did need them, and used my body to obtain them because it had no other body to use. I went to the doctor. I made an urgent appointment because what was happening to me could not wait for the regular appointment 3 weeks away. And because 3 more weeks eating things I should not eat were 3 weeks in which what was inside me would continue changing my tastes and my cravings and my relationship with food, until what I understood by eating resembled nothing of what humans understand by eating. I told the doctor I had strange cravings. I did not tell him about the dirt or what came after the dirt. I told him about the olives and the raw liver. He looked at me with the expression of a doctor who has heard strange things before and classifies what he hears into categories ranging from normal to concerning, placing cravings for olives and raw liver in the strange but not alarming category. He did blood tests. The results showed mild anemia and an iron deficiency that could explain the cravings for iron-rich foods like liver and could be treated with supplements and a diet, including more red meat, more legumes, more spinach. The doctor gave me a prescription and told me to come back in a month. I did not tell him the iron supplements would not work, because what my body was asking for was not iron, but something with no name in modern medicine, something not found in pharmacies or supermarkets or anywhere humans buy the things they need to feed themselves. The supplements did not work. I took them for a week. The hunger did not leave. The hunger grew larger and more specific and harder to ignore. It no longer came only at night. It came at any hour. At work, on the street, on the subway, surrounded by people who did not know that the man standing beside them holding the handrail had something inside him that looked at the people in the car with a hunger that was not human, that evaluated each person not as a person, but as something that could satisfy a need growing larger each day. A need less and less resembling the hunger a human being feels, and more resembling the hunger of something not human, something that has not eaten in a long time and needs to eat things human beings do not eat. I did not eat anyone. I need to say that. I did not eat anyone. I did not touch anyone. I did not approach anyone more than any person approaches others in a crowded subway car at 8 in the morning. But I thought about it, or something inside me thought it for me. And I heard the thought with the clarity of a voice speaking inside your head, saying things not yours that sound like yours because they are inside you. And because the difference between a thought that is yours and a thought from something living inside you blurs over time until you do not know which are yours and which are the others. And each passing day the difference grew more blurred. And each day the thoughts that were not mine mixed more with those that were, until I could not tell if the idea I had just had was mine, or belonged to the hunger living inside me, the hunger needing to eat things I did not want to name. I stopped leaving the house. I stopped going to work. I called to say I was sick and my boss told me to get better and come back when I was well. And I told him yes, knowing I was not going to get better, that what was happening to me could not be cured with rest or medicine or anything a doctor could prescribe. I stayed locked in my apartment with the curtains closed and the lights off, and the hunger growing inside me with the steadiness of something feeding on my resistance, growing larger the more I resisted. I did not eat, or I tried not to eat. I sat on the sofa and concentrated on not thinking about food, on not going to the kitchen, on not opening the refrigerator. But the hunger was not in my head where I could fight it with thoughts. It was in that place deeper and lower that had no name, that did not respond to logic or will, but responded to something more primitive than logic and will, something that existed before me and would exist after me, using me as a means to get what it needed. I could not eat normal food because normal food did not satisfy the hunger, and because each time I opened the refrigerator and looked at the food inside, I felt a revulsion that was not mine, but the revulsion of what was inside me, a revulsion toward cooked food and processed food and food humans eat because humans do things to food before eating it. Cook it, and season it, and transform it into something unlike what it was when alive. And what was inside me did not want transformed things, but things as they were before humans touched them. Raw things. Things that still tasted of what they were when alive. Things each day further from what humans call food. and closer to what humans call something else I do not want to name. The 5th day without eating, I woke up on the hallway floor. Not in bed. On the floor. Lying face down with my cheek against the cold tiles and my arms stretched out at my sides and my hands open, palms up, like the hands of someone waiting to receive something, or like the hands of someone who has given up, stopped fighting what is happening to them. I had dirt in my mouth. Not the park dirt I had kept in my pocket, but dirt from the potted plant at my apartment entrance. A pot with a plant that had been dead for months, its soil dry and gray. The soil of pots where plants die and earth turns to dust. I had that dirt in my mouth and between my teeth and on my tongue. And the taste was different from the park dirt, drier and more bitter and emptier, like the taste of something that has lost everything it had, leaving only the husk of what it was. I got up from the floor. I went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror, and the man looking back at me was not exactly me. It was my face. It was my eyes. It was my hair and my nose and my mouth. But the expression was not mine. The eyes had a fixity my eyes do not have. A fixity like the eyes of animals that look without blinking, that do not look away, that make you feel what is looking at you is not thinking what a human thinks but something different, something with no words in any human language. The expression was of someone looking through eyes not their own, evaluating the body they live in with the gaze of a tenant inspecting an apartment they have rented, checking that everything works, everything is in place. The apartment is habitable for what they need to do. I smiled, or something made me smile. A smile appearing on my face without my brain ordering it. Not my smile, but another smile using my lips and teeth and cheeks, but expressing something I was not feeling, because what I was feeling was fear. And smiles of fear do not look like the smile I saw in the mirror, which was a smile of satisfaction. I washed my face. I brushed my teeth. I got dressed. And as I dressed, I noticed my hands moving differently. Not clumsily. The opposite. They moved with a fluency not my own, not the fluency with which my hands move when I dress each morning half asleep and in a hurry. They moved with the precision of someone who has studied the movements required to button a shirt, and executes them with the efficiency of a machine, wasting no time on unnecessary motions. Each button slid into its buttonhole on the first try. Each garment settled into place without adjustment or correction. My body dressed itself with the competence of something that has finished learning how this body works and now uses it better than I have used it for 35 years. I went to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator. And for the first time in 5 days, I felt no revulsion toward the food inside. I saw the yogurts and the fruit and the cheese and the milk and everything a normal refrigerator contains. Everything a normal person eats each day. I saw it and felt nothing. Neither hunger nor revulsion nor interest. As if what was inside me had decided it no longer needed to feed through my mouth because it had found another way to feed. One requiring no eating. One requiring no participation from me. One working without my knowledge and without my ability to stop it. The hunger disappeared. Overnight. The hunger that had woken me at 2 a.m. to eat black olives, that had made me buy raw liver, that had put dirt in my mouth, that had made me think things I do not want to repeat, disappeared as if it had never existed, and in its place remained something worse than hunger. Remained satiety. The satiety of something full, finished eating, now able to devote its energy to other things besides seeking food, to using the body it lives in for what it needs it for. And what terrified me was not that the hunger disappeared. What terrified me was what happened the morning after it disappeared. I woke up. I went to the kitchen. I made coffee. I ate toast with butter. I ate like a normal person eating a normal breakfast on a Tuesday morning. Everything normal. Everything in order. Everything as it should be. But nothing was as it should be because while I ate the toast, I noticed it was not me deciding how much butter to put, how much coffee to pour, how many slices of toast to eat. The decisions made themselves. My body functioned without me giving orders. My hands knew what to do and did it without asking permission. My mouth opened and closed and chewed with a rhythm not my rhythm, but a rhythm more efficient, more mechanical than mine. My hand spread the butter and my mouth chewed and my throat swallowed with the automation of something that has taken control of a body's basic functions and executes them without consulting the body's owner because the body, Owner is no longer the owner but the tenant, and the tenant does not decide how much butter goes on the toast, because the toast is not for the tenant, but for maintaining the apartment in condition for the one now living inside, the one needing the body to function, the heart to beat, the lungs to breathe, the stomach to digest, because a body that does not function is useless to what needs it, and what needs it has spent weeks learning to use it, and will not let it break from lack of maintenance. And while my body breakfasted without me, I was inside looking out from a place that grew smaller each day, darker each day, farther from the surface, a place resembling the place where the hunger had been. That place deeper and lower with no name. Now the place where I lived while something not me lived in the rest of my body, eating toast with butter and drinking coffee and dressing in my clothes and walking out my door and walking my streets with my legs and looking at the world with my eyes and smiling with my mouth. The smile that was not my smile and never would be my smile, because my smile no longer existed, and what existed was the smile of what now lived here. The first time I lost time was in the kitchen. I was washing the dishes after dinner, alone in the apartment because I have lived alone since my roommate moved out a year ago. And living alone is something I chose, and something I like. Even though sometimes solitude has the drawback that there is no one to tell you something strange is happening when something strange is happening. I was washing a plate with hot water running over my hands and soap making foam between my fingers, and I looked at the microwave clock above the sink. 9:12. I looked back at the plate. I kept washing. I looked up again. 9:19. 7 minutes. 7 minutes that did not exist. 7 minutes during which I had been washing a plate that does not need 7 minutes to wash because a plate takes 30 seconds to wash. Or a minute if it is very dirty. Not 7 minutes, which is the time it takes to wash an entire sink full of dishes. But the plate was in my hands and the water was still running and the soap was still foaming and everything was exactly as it had been at 9:12, except that now it was 9:19. And the 7 minutes between the two times were not in my memory. I thought I had become distracted, that my brain had gone somewhere else while my hands washed the plate automatically, and the 7 minutes had passed without me registering them, because the brain does that sometimes, disconnects from what the body is doing and goes elsewhere. And when it returns, time has passed without you noticing. It happens to everyone. It happens when you drive on a road, and you arrive at your destination without remembering the journey because your body drove while your brain thought about something else. It happens when you are in a boring meeting and suddenly the meeting is over and you do not know what was said in the last half hour. It is normal. It is human. It is not concerning. The second time was the next day. I was sitting on the sofa reading a book with a cup of tea on the side table and a blanket over my legs, because February nights are cold, and because reading on the sofa with a blanket and a cup of tea is one of the few things I do at night that make me feel that living alone is a choice and not a sentence. I looked at the clock, 8:23. I went back to the book. I read one sentence. I looked up, 8:31. 8 minutes. 8 minutes during which I had been sitting on the sofa with a book in my hands, and during which I had read no more than one sentence, because the sentence I was reading when I looked at the clock was the same sentence I was reading when I looked again 8 minutes later. I had not turned the page. I had not advanced in my reading. I had been sitting with the book open to the same page and the same sentence for 8 minutes without reading anything, and without moving, and without remembering anything that had happened during those 8 minutes. I got up from the sofa. I went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was normal. My eyes were normal. I did not look like someone who had just lost 8 minutes of her life without explanation. I looked like someone who had been reading on the sofa on a Friday night and had gotten up to go to the bathroom. Normal. Everything normal. Except that 8 minutes of my life did not exist, and the feeling that something was missing was not a feeling but a fact. The clock confirmed every time I looked at it. The third time was different. It was different because when the minutes ended, something had changed. I was in the kitchen preparing breakfast on a Saturday morning. I looked at the clock. 8:45. I blinked. 8:57. 12 minutes. 12 minutes not in my memory. But this time when the 12 minutes ended and my brain reconnected with my body, I saw that something was different. The kitchen window was open. I had not opened it. I was sure I had not opened it because it was February and cold. And I do not open windows in February because the cold bothers me, and because there is no reason to open a window in a kitchen in February at 8 in the morning. But the window was open, and the cold air was coming in through the window, and the curtains were moving with the wind, and my body was standing in front of the open window with my hands on the sill, as if I had been looking out during the 12 minutes I did not remember. I closed the window. I sat down in the kitchen chair, and I thought about what had just happened and what it meant. It meant that during the minutes I lost, my body was not still. During the minutes I lost, my body did things I did not decide and I did not remember. Small things like opening a window, but they were things, and things do not do themselves. And if my body did things during the minutes I lost, someone was doing those things with my body while I was not there. I began documenting the episodes. Each time I lost minutes, I noted the start time and the end time, and what I found different when I returned. A notebook I left open on the kitchen table with a pen beside it, so I could note the data as soon as the minutes ended, and my brain started working again, and my eyes looked at the clock, and the clock told me how much time I had lost. At first the notes were brief: start time, end time, duration, changes observed. I wrote them with the coldness of someone taking clinical notes about something happening to them, needing to maintain emotional distance to not lose the ability to observe and think. But as the episodes became more frequent and the changes larger, the notes grew longer and more detailed and more desperate, because emotional distance is a luxury you cannot afford when what is happening to you is that your body does things without your permission. And each time the things it does are more elaborate and more unsettling. The episodes became more frequent. The first day there were 2, the second day 3, the third day 5. Each episode lasted between 5 and 15 minutes, and each episode left a change in the apartment that I noted in the notebook with the precision of someone documenting the symptoms of an illness they do not understand, needing data to understand. Monday, living room window open, sofa cushion on the floor, glass of water full on the counter that I had not filled. Tuesday, hallway closet door open, shoes moved, a kitchen chair moved next to the window. Wednesday, all the lights in the apartment on, front door unlocked, a bathroom towel on the hallway floor. Thursday, the book I was reading opened to a page I had not read, the radio onto a station I do not listen to, a chalk mark on the bedroom door frame that I had not made. The changes were small. They were the kind of change a normal person would not notice, because normal people do not notice if the kitchen chair is half a meter from where they left it, or if the shoes are in the order they put them, or if the door is locked with the key, or just the latch. But I noticed, because I noticed everything since the minutes started disappearing, and because each change was proof that my body did things without my permission, and that the things it did were not random, but had a purpose I could not see, but that existed because the changes followed a pattern I discovered as I noted them in the notebook and compared them with each other. The pattern was this: my body was preparing the apartment for something. It opened windows to let air in. It moved chairs next to windows to sit and look out. It turned on lights to illuminate corners normally dark. It unlocked the front door so it could be opened from outside without a key. It moved objects blocking the path between rooms to clear the way from the front door to the bedroom. My body was reorganizing my apartment with the logic of someone preparing a space to receive someone who is coming, needing the space prepared in a specific way for what that someone will do when they arrive. The second week, the episodes grew longer. 15 minutes, 20, 25, and the changes grew larger. On a Tuesday, I lost 23 minutes, and when I returned, I found my body had moved the living room furniture. Not much. It had pushed it a few centimeters toward the walls, leaving an empty space in the center of the room. A space with no furniture and no objects, forming an almost perfect circle about 2 meters in diameter in the middle of the living room. An empty circle serving no purpose I could imagine except to stand in the center of that circle, or to sit in the center of that circle, or to do something in the center of that circle requiring space, requiring the furniture pushed aside. I tried to move the furniture back. I pushed the sofa toward the center. I dragged the coffee table back to its original position. I put the shelf where it had been, and the next morning the furniture was against the walls again, and the circle was empty again, and the marks on the parquet where the furniture had been dragged were deeper than the day before, as if my body had pushed them harder this time, with the force of someone not about to let the furniture reoccupy a space that needed to remain empty. I stopped trying to move the furniture. I left the empty circle. I let my apartment reorganize itself according to the needs of what lived inside me, using my nights to prepare a space I did not understand, but that what was inside me understood perfectly. On a Wednesday, I lost 28 minutes, and when I returned, I found my body had taken down all the mirrors in the apartment. The bathroom mirror was removed and leaning against the hallway wall. The small bedroom mirror was face down on the bed. The entryway mirror was turned to the wall. All the mirrors in the apartment were out of service, as if what used my body during the minutes I lost did not want to see itself reflected, or as if what was coming could not be seen reflected, or as if mirrors showed something that should not be seen. On a Thursday, I lost 32 minutes. 32 minutes, the longest episode so far, and when it ended, it left me standing in the center of the empty circle in the living room, with my arms extended at my sides, and my palms facing up and my head tilted back, staring at the ceiling with my eyes open. I was standing in the center of the circle in a posture that was not natural and not comfortable, resembling the posture of someone waiting to receive something from above, or the posture of someone offering themselves to something above them, something requiring the one offering to be in the center of an empty space with arms open and palms up and head tilted toward the ceiling. When I returned from the 32 minutes and found myself standing in that posture, I felt something I had not felt in previous episodes. I felt I was not alone in the apartment. There was no one visible. No one in the living room or kitchen or bedroom or bathroom. I checked every room. I looked under the bed. I opened the closets. I looked behind the curtains. I looked in the shower. I looked in every corner where a person might hide, and in every corner where a person could not hide but where I looked anyway. Because the feeling of not being alone was so strong, I needed to check every centimeter of the apartment to convince myself I was alone, even though I did not feel alone. There was no one. But the feeling that I was not alone did not leave. The feeling was there like a pressure in the air, invisible but perceptible, like the pressure in a room when someone has just left, and the air still holds the shape of the person who was there a second ago, no longer present, but having left their imprint on the space they occupied. And the feeling grew stronger when I approached the center of the empty circle in the living room, as if what was in the air was concentrated at that point, as if the circle was where the presence was densest, where the air was heavier, where the temperature was 1 degree colder than in the rest of the apartment. The third week, the episodes changed again. They were no longer minutes. They were hours. The transition was gradual. 35 minutes on a Monday, 48 on a Tuesday, an hour and 20 on a Wednesday, and on Thursday I fell asleep at 11 at night and woke at 7 in the morning, and between 11 and 7 there were 8 hours not in my memory, but that my body had used to do things I found each morning upon waking. And the worst part of losing 8 hours was that the 8 hours coincided with sleep hours, meaning I did not know if I was asleep during those 8 hours or if I was awake, and my body did things while I was inside watching, unable to remember what I saw, like someone watching a movie in a dark theater and when the lights come up they remember nothing of what they have seen. The chalk marks on the doorframe had multiplied. It was no longer 1 mark but 12. 12 vertical marks like a tally, a count of something repeated, someone keeping track to know how many times it has happened and how many remain until reaching a number with a meaning I do not know. The empty circle in the living room had something on the floor. Not chalk marks, but marks made with something like ash or charcoal. Marks forming lines and curves and angles that were not drawings or letters or symbols I could recognize, but had the complexity of something drawn carefully and intentionally, holding meaning for whoever drew them, even if they held none for whoever looked at them. The mirrors were no longer turned or removed. They were broken. Every mirror in the apartment had a crack in the center spreading toward the edges like spider legs. The cracks were not random. The cracks in all 3 mirrors had the same pattern, the same branches at the same angles, as if someone had struck all three mirrors at the same point with the same force and the same intention of breaking them in a specific way, producing a specific pattern, meaning something specific. And in the fragments of broken glass, the reflections multiplied and distorted, showing versions of the room that did not match the real room, angles that did not exist, and shadows with no source, and shapes that moved at the edges of the fragments when I was not looking directly at them. And that went still when I turned my head to look at them straight on. And the tally marks on the doorframe increased each night, 13, 14, 15. Each morning, one more mark. Each morning closer to a number I did not know, but that what used my body at night did know, counting with the patience of someone waiting for the moment to arrive, keeping track of how much time remained. On night number 20, I set up a camera. Not a professional surveillance camera, but my laptop camera, left open on the living room table pointing at the empty circle with a recording program running that would record everything that happened in the living room during the night. I hesitated before doing it. I hesitated because part of me did not want to see what my body did during the hours I lost. Part of me preferred not to know, preferred to keep noting the changes in the notebook each morning, and keep measuring the distance between what I found and what I expected to find, without having to face the image of my own body, doing things I had not asked it to do, in a living room, rearranged with marks on the floor and broken mirrors and an empty circle in the center that seemed prepared for something I did not want to imagine. But the part of me that needed to know was stronger than the part that did not want to know, and so I set up the camera. I fell asleep at 11 with the laptop recording and the certainty that in the morning I would have 8 hours of video showing me what my body did during the hours I lost. I took a chamomile to sleep faster. I closed my eyes, and sleep came with an ease that was not natural, as if what was inside me wanted me to fall asleep early to have more time, as if it could accelerate the sleep process the same way it could move my hands and open my windows and break my mirrors. I woke at 7. I went to the laptop. I opened the recording. And what I saw made me close the laptop and sit on the living room floor with my back against the wall and my hands covering my mouth to keep from screaming. At 12:14 in the morning, my body got out of bed. In the video, my silhouette entered the living room, eyes open, arms at my sides, bare feet, the nightgown I sleep in, and an expression on my face that was not my expression, but the expression of someone using a face not their own. Someone who does not know how to make the expressions that face normally makes. My body walked to the center of the circle. It stood still. It raised its arms. It turned its palms up. It tilted its head back. And it opened its mouth. From my mouth came a sound, not my voice, not a human voice. A sound somewhere between a hum and a chant, with a frequency that made the video image tremble, and the sound distort, and the recording become unstable, as if what my mouth was producing was not just a sound, but something affecting the technology recording it. The sound lasted 4 minutes. 4 minutes during which my body stood in the center of the circle with arms open and mouth open, and the sound coming from my throat with the intensity of something that has been silent a long time, and finally has a mouth it can use to say what it needs to say. When the sound ended, my body lowered its arms, it closed its mouth, and it stood still, looking toward a point in the living room to my left, a point where there was nothing except the wall and the shadow of the furniture my body had pushed aside to make the circle. But my body looked at that point as if something was there. Something I could not see in the video, but my body saw with an attention, meaning that what was there was real to what controlled my body, even if it was not real to the laptop camera. And then my body did something that made me close the laptop. It smiled. My face smiled in the direction of the point where there was nothing. A smile that was not my smile, but a wider smile, more open, more ancient than any smile my face had made in 33 years. A smile of welcome. A smile saying you have arrived, and saying I have been waiting for you, and saying everything is ready. And my body opened its arms in the direction of the empty point as arms open to receive someone arriving. Someone you want to embrace. And my hands closed in the air as if grasping something not seen. And my body took a step forward toward the empty point and embraced the nothingness with the intensity of someone embracing something they have waited for a long time, something finally here. And what was not seen in the video could be felt in the way the image trembled, and in the way the sound distorted, and in the way the living room light flickered, as if the apartment's electricity was being affected by something not electrical. Something in the center of the circle embracing my body with a force making my body lean forward as if bearing a weight. Not seen but existing. Weighty. There. The embrace lasted 4 minutes. 4 minutes during which my body stood motionless, embracing something the camera could not see but my body felt, because my arms were closed around something, and my hands gripped something, and my face rested against something at shoulder height that was not air, because air cannot be gripped and cannot be embraced, and does not have the consistency of what my body was embracing in the center of an empty circle at 12:14 in the morning. And mark number 21 appeared on the door frame. And that morning when I looked at myself in the broken bathroom mirror, I saw my face fragmented in the pieces of glass the crack had created. And in each fragment my face had a different expression, and none of the expressions were mine. And one of the expressions smiled with the smile of welcome I had seen in the video. Now in my broken mirror looking at me from a fragment of glass reflecting a face that was mine, but no longer entirely mine, because what had arrived during night number 20 had stayed, and what had stayed needed a face, and the face it needed was mine. I noticed it on a Tuesday morning while brushing my teeth. I was in front of the bathroom mirror with the toothbrush in my mouth and toothpaste foaming on my gums, and my eyes half closed because it was 7 in the morning, and at 7 in the morning, eyes do not want to be fully open, and the brain does not want to be fully awake, and the body runs on the automatic mode it uses to do the things it does every morning without consciousness needing to participate. I raised my left hand to brush away a strand of hair falling across my forehead, a gesture lasting less than a second, a gesture requiring no thought or planning or anything beyond the instant decision to move a hand toward your forehead and brush away a hair that bothers you. My hand went up, and in the mirror my hand was slow to go up. Not much. Not a second or half a second or anything measurable with a clock. An instant. A fraction of time below what the human brain can calculate, but above what the human brain can ignore. My hand in the mirror went up after my real hand went up. A delay so small it could have been an optical illusion or a blink or the effect of the bathroom light. A fluorescent light flickering 60 times per second, sometimes creating effects that deceive the eye, making moving things seem out of sync when they are not. I lowered my hand. The reflection lowered its hand at the same time. I raised my hand again. The reflection raised its hand at the same time. I moved my head to the right. The reflection moved its head to the right at the same time. I made 3 more movements, quick, random, the kind of movements you make when testing if your reflection follows or not, like a child playing with their shadow to check that the shadow does what they do. Everything synchronized, everything normal, everything as it should be, because mirrors reflect light, and light travels at a speed making the reflection instantaneous. No possible delay between the real movement and the reflected movement. Physics says mirrors do not lie. Physics says what you see in a mirror is exactly what is in front of the mirror and nothing more. And I believed physics for 36 years until physics stopped working in my bathroom at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. I decided it had been an illusion. I finished brushing my teeth. I rinsed my mouth. I spat. And as I straightened up after spitting and looked at the mirror, I saw that my reflection was still bent toward the sink, still in the spitting position when I was already upright looking at the mirror. The difference lasted an instant, less than a blink, but it was enough for my brain to register that my reflection had arrived late to a position it should have reached at the same time as me. I did not give it any importance. I did not give it importance because giving importance to a reflection that takes an instant longer than it should to copy you is the kind of thing that turns you into a paranoid person who looks at mirrors with distrust and starts looking for supernatural explanations for phenomena that have normal explanations involving words like perception and brain latency and visual fatigue. I got dressed. I had breakfast. I went to work, and I did not think about the reflection again until that night. That night I was washing my face before bed. The bathroom was silent. The house was silent. The only sounds were water falling in the sink and my hands passing over my face with soap. I turned off the faucet. I looked up. I looked at the mirror. And my reflection was looking at me with an expression that was not my expression. I do not know how to describe the difference because the difference was not in the features or the position of the face or the shape of the eyes or the position of the mouth. The difference was in something with no name, something like what people call the look. That thing behind the eyes that says who you are, that cannot be copied because it is not a muscle or a bone or a gesture, but something deeper than muscles and bones and gestures. The thing making each person's look unique. My reflection had my eyes, had my eyebrows, had my eyelids, but the look was not mine. The look was of someone observing me from the other side of the glass, with an attention not the attention of a reflection, copying what it sees, but the attention of someone looking for the first time at something that interests them, wanting to study it carefully. It lasted a second, maybe two. Then the expression changed and my reflection went back to being my reflection with my face and my look, and my eyes looking at me from the mirror, with the normality of all the reflections that had looked at me from all the mirrors during 36 years of life. But during that second or those 2 seconds, what had looked at me from the mirror was not me, was something else that had my face and used my eyes and looked through a mirror that should reflect, and instead was showing something behind the reflection, or inside the reflection, or in a place mirrors should not show. From that night on, I began watching the mirror. Every time I passed a mirror, I looked at my reflection with the attention of someone searching for a flaw in a copy, a difference betraying that the copy was not perfect, that something inside the copy was not working as it should, and the differences were there. Not always. Not in all mirrors. But they were there. A blink arriving late. A smile lasting an instant longer than my smile. A hand movement starting half a second after my hand started moving. Details no one else would have noticed because no one looks at their reflection with the obsession I had begun looking at mine. A week later, the reflection did something that could not be explained by visual fatigue or brain latency or any of the words my rational brain had been using to convince itself that what I saw in the mirror was normal. I was in the bathroom at night. I had finished showering. I was standing in front of the mirror with a towel around my waist and wet hair and steam from the shower fogging the edges of the mirror, leaving the center clear with a circle of clean glass where my face appeared with a sharpness the steam made more dramatic because the face was in focus and everything around it was blurred like a photo with the background out of focus. I raised my right hand to run my fingers through my wet hair. My reflection raised its right hand at the same time. No delay. Normal. I ran my fingers through my hair from front to back. My reflection ran its fingers through its hair from front to back. Normal. I lowered my hand. My reflection lowered its hand. Normal. And then my reflection raised its hand again. I did not raise my hand. My hand was at my side. Still, but my reflection's hand rose from its side to face level and ran its fingers through its hair again, with the same gesture I had made 5 seconds earlier. As if it were repeating a gesture it had seen and wanted to practice. As if it were learning to move by copying my movements but practicing them on its own after I had stopped making them. I stood still, completely still, standing in front of the mirror with my hands at my sides and my eyes open looking at my reflection, which had its hand raised, running its fingers through its hair with a gesture that was my gesture, but that my body was not making. The reflection ran its fingers through its hair once, twice, 3 times, like someone practicing a movement until it comes naturally, like someone rehearsing in front of a mirror, but instead of being on this side of the mirror rehearsing, they were on the other side rehearsing with my image in my hand and my hair moving in the reflection, even though my real hair was still and wet and plastered to my forehead with no one touching it. The reflection's hand lowered, stayed at its side, and my reflection looked at me with the look that was not my look and was not the look of a reflection but the look of something that knows it has been discovered and does not mind being discovered, because being discovered changes nothing, and because what is happening will keep happening whether I see it and whether I know it. I covered the bathroom mirror with a towel. I did not sleep that night. I sat on the sofa staring at the television without watching it. thinking about what I had seen and what it meant and whether I should see a doctor or a psychologist or no one, because what I had seen was not a medical problem or a psychological problem, but a problem with no category in the world, where reflections, our reflections in mirrors are glass that returns light and nothing more. The next morning I removed the towel from the mirror. The mirror was normal. My reflection was normal. I moved. It moved with me. No delay. No extra gestures. No looks that were not mine. Everything normal. And for 3 days everything was normal. And I started to think I had imagined it. That lack of sleep and stress and suggestion had conspired to make me see things in a mirror that had nothing more than my reflection. On the 4th day I was in the kitchen washing a glass. In the kitchen window facing the interior courtyard, my image was reflected because it was night, and at night windows become dark mirrors reflecting the inside of the house, with an image quality worse than a mirror, as but enough to see your silhouette and face and movements while you do the things you do in the kitchen at night. I was not thinking about the reflection. I was thinking about the dinner I had just finished and worked the next day, and the normal things a normal person thinks about while washing a glass at 10 at night. I was washing the glass and looking at the window out of the corner of my eye when I saw that my reflection in the window moved its head. I did not move my head. My head was looking at the glass I was washing, but the reflection in the window turned its head to the right, as if it were looking at something to my right, something in the kitchen with me that I could not see because I was looking at the glass, but that my reflection could see because my reflection was looking somewhere other than where I was looking. I lifted my head and looked directly at the window. My reflection was looking where I was looking. Normal. I looked to the right where my reflection had been looking a second earlier. Nothing was there. The counter, the microwave, the toaster, the normal things in a kitchen, nothing special. But my reflection had looked there with an intention reflections do not have, because reflections do not look, they copy. And copying is not the same as looking because copying has no intention, and looking does. The following days my reflection started doing more things I did not do. It smiled when I was not smiling. Not a big smile or an obvious smile. A minimal smile, a curvature of the lips barely visible, lasting an instant, appearing at moments when I had no reason to smile. Moments when I was alone in the bathroom washing my hands or brushing my teeth, or looking in the mirror searching for the differences that each day were more frequent and harder to ignore. The smile appeared and disappeared with the speed of a blink, and each time it appeared I tried to see it clearly. And each time I tried to see it clearly it disappeared as if what controlled my reflection knew I was looking and did not want me to fully see the smile, as if it wanted me to know it was there, but not be able to prove it. It moved its eyes. My eyes looked straight ahead, but my reflection's eyes shifted to the side as if following something moving through the room, something I could not see because I was on this side of the mirror, and what moved was on the other side or in a place only the reflection could see. My reflection's eyes followed things that did not exist in my bathroom, with the attention of someone seeing things others do not see, someone not bothering to explain what they see because others would not understand the explanation. I started spending more time in front of the mirror, not out of vanity but out of vigilance. I would stand in front of the bathroom mirror for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, motionless, watching my reflection, waiting for it to do something I was not doing. And most of the time it did nothing. It behaved like a normal reflection with perfect synchronization, leaving no room for doubt. But I knew it did it on purpose. I knew it behaved normally when I watched and did the smiles and the gestures and the eye movements when I was not paying attention, or when I looked out of the corner of my eye, or when I was about to turn away. I knew because sometimes I caught it at the end of a gesture, in the fraction of a second when the gesture ended, and the reflection went back to copying me. And in that fraction of a second, I saw the end of a smile fading or the end of an eye movement returning to its original position, with the hurry of someone who has been almost discovered. And one night it did something that made me leave the bathroom and close the door and sit in the hallway with my back against the wall and my breath short. I was looking at the mirror. My reflection was looking at me. I was motionless. My reflection was motionless. We looked at each other with the fixity of two people studying each other, waiting for the other to do something. And my reflection smiled. Not the minimal smile of previous days, a wide smile, A smile showing teeth, lifting cheeks, changing the shape of the eyes with the intensity of a smile expressing something not joy, but something darker than joy, something with no name in the vocabulary of human expressions. It smiled and raised its right hand slowly with the palm facing me and extended its index finger and pointed. It did not point toward the mirror. It did not point toward me. It pointed toward something behind me, something in the bathroom, with me, something at my back I could not see because I was looking at the mirror, but my reflection could see because my reflection was not looking at the mirror, but at what was behind me. I did not turn around. I did not turn around because turning around meant stopping looking at the mirror, and stopping looking at the mirror meant stopping seeing what my reflection was doing, and what my reflection was doing was pointing at something behind me with a smile, saying that what was behind me was something my reflection liked, something my reflection was happy about, something my reflection had been waiting for. And if what was behind me was something my reflection liked, it could not be something I would like because my reflection was no longer my reflection, but something living in the mirror, using my face, making gestures I did not make, smiling when I did not smile, looking at things I could not see. I turned around. Nothing was behind me. The bathroom was empty. The shower was empty. The door was open and the hallway was dark, and there was no one and nothing to justify my reflection pointing at my back with a smile of satisfaction. I turned back to the mirror. My reflection was normal, hand down. No smile, gaze forward, as if nothing had happened, as if the last 30 seconds had never existed. But they had existed. And from that night on, every time I looked in the mirror, I looked for the pointing finger gesture and the smile saying something was behind me. And for several days, nothing happened. My reflection behaved like a reflection. It copied my movements with no delay, and no gestures of its own, and no smiles I had not made. Until I started noticing something else, something worse than the smiles and the gestures and the pointing finger. I started noticing that the delay had disappeared. My reflection no longer arrived late. My reflection arrived early. When I raised my hand, my reflection raised its hand an instant before I raised mine. When I turned my head, my reflection turned its head an instant before I turned mine. When I blinked, my reflection blinked before my eyelids closed. My reflection was anticipating my movements with the precision of someone who knows what I am going to do before I do it, because it is no longer copying what I do, but anticipating what I will do, because it knows my body better than I do, because it knows which movement comes after each movement with the certainty of someone who has spent weeks studying me from the other side of the glass, memorizing every pattern and every habit and every tick and every unconscious gesture I make without realizing. Gestures my reflection knows better than I, because I do not see myself from outside, but my reflection does see me from outside, and what it sees it learns, and what it learns it uses to anticipate what I will do before I do it. And that meant something that made me cover every mirror in the house with sheets and towels and blankets and everything I could find that could cover a reflective surface. It meant that what was in the mirror was no longer learning to be me. It had already learned. It already knew how I move and how I gesture and how I look and how I smile. It already knew everything it needed to know about my body. And now it was anticipating because it no longer needed to copy me. Now it was the one moving first and I was the one copying. And the difference between the reflection and the original was reversing. And soon I would not know which of us was the reflection and which was the original, because the original is the one who moves first, and the one moving first was no longer me. I covered all the mirrors. I covered all the windows with thick curtains, letting no light in and no view out and no chance for glass to reflect anything inside. I turned off my phone screen every time I was not using it so it would not reflect my face. I avoided puddles in the street and store windows and glass doors of buildings and any surface where I might see my reflection, because every reflective surface was a window through which what had my face could look at me and smile at me and point at things behind me and anticipate my movements, with the certainty of something that no longer needs to learn, because it already knows everything it needs to know. I lived in an apartment without mirrors and without visible windows and without reflective screens. And the darkness of an apartment with no reflective surfaces is a different darkness from normal darkness, because in normal darkness there is always a gleam, a glass, A polished metal returning your image, reminding you that you exist because you see yourself existing. And in an apartment without reflections, you stop seeing yourself. And stopping seeing yourself is starting to forget what your face looks like. And forgetting what your face looks like is starting to doubt whether your face is still your face, or whether it is already someone else's. And one morning I woke up and went to the bathroom and without thinking, removed the towel from the mirror because routines are stronger than fear. And because the body does the things it does every morning without consulting the brain, I looked at the mirror, and what I saw made me step back until I hit the bathroom wall. My reflection was already there. Before I arrived, my reflection was standing in front of the mirror looking at me with the wide smile and with its hand raised and with its finger pointing. But this time it was not pointing behind me. It was pointing at me, directly at me. And the smile said what smiles say when someone has finished waiting and has decided the moment has come to do what they have been preparing for weeks. And as I watched my reflection point at me, my hands rose. I did not raise them. They rose on their own. My hands rose and positioned themselves in front of me with palms facing the mirror, imitating the posture my reflection had. A posture I had not decided to imitate, but that my body was imitating because my body no longer followed my orders, but the orders of what was on the other side of the glass, what had spent weeks learning to be me and now knew how to be me better than I did. What did not need the mirror to control me, but used the mirror so I could see who commanded and who obeyed. That the one commanding was no longer the one on this side of the glass, but the one on the other. And then my reflection stopped pointing, lowered its hand, lowered its smile, stood looking at me with a neutral expression more terrifying than the smile, because the neutral expression was my expression, was exactly my face at rest with every muscle in place and every wrinkle in position and every pore in its spot. No difference remained, no delay or anticipation or gestures of its own or alien smiles. My reflection was me, perfectly me, and I stood in front of the mirror with my hands raised in a posture I had not chosen, looking at a reflection identical to me, except for one detail I took 10 seconds to see, and that when I saw, it was the last thing I saw before my hands lowered on their own and my feet walked on their own backward, and my body left the bathroom, without me giving it the order to leave. The detail was this. I had my hands raised with palms facing the mirror. My reflection had its hands down at its sides. I was copying my reflection. My reflection was no longer copying me. The mirror no longer reflected. The mirror commanded, and I obeyed. The first time I heard her, I was washing dishes on a Sunday night. It was not a voice coming from outside. It was not a voice entering through my ears like the voices of people talking around you. Voices the brain processes as external sound coming from a point in space you can locate by turning your head. It was a voice inside my head, in a place that was not the place where thoughts are, because thoughts do not have voices. Thoughts are ideas without sound that the brain produces. And my mother always told me they were my conscience speaking to me. But this was not my conscience or my thoughts or anything I had produced. It was a voice with tone and timbre, and a way of pronouncing words that was not my way of pronouncing words. That sounded like another person's voice would sound if that other person were speaking inside my skull with their mouth pressed against my brain. The voice said one word, a single word. It said here. Nothing else. Here. And the way it said here was not the way someone says here, when you ask where they are and they answer here to indicate their location. It was the way someone says here, when they arrive at a place after a long journey and confirm they have arrived. Here. Like someone opening the door of a new house, stepping inside, looking around and saying here with the satisfaction of one who has found the place they were looking for. I dropped the plate I was washing. It fell into the sink, and the noise of the plate against metal brought me back to the world of external sounds where things make noise because they vibrate, and because vibrations reach the ears, not because someone is talking inside your head with a voice not your own. I stood in front of the sink with wet hands and running water and my heart beating at the speed hearts beat when something scares you. And I waited. I waited for the voice to say something else, but it said nothing. It stayed quiet. And the silence inside my head returned to the normal silence inside heads when no one is speaking in them. I thought I had imagined it. I thought the tiredness of a Sunday night after a long week of work and little sleep had made my brain produce a sound that was not real and interpret it as a voice that did not exist. The brain does those things when it is tired. It produces sounds and images and sensations not real, but feeling real because the tired brain does not distinguish well between what it produces and what comes from outside. The second time was the following Thursday. 4 days later, 4 days in which I heard nothing and convinced myself that Sunday had been a product of tiredness and that my brain had returned to normal functioning. I was in bed about to fall asleep with the light off and my eyes closed and my body relaxed in that state between waking and sleeping where thoughts blur, ideas mix with each other without logic, and the external world recedes until it stops existing, leaving only the inside of your head with what is in it. And what was in it spoke. The voice said a sentence. It said, "It is cold here." I opened my eyes. The room was dark. The heat was on. It was not cold. The temperature was the normal temperature of a heated room in winter, where someone lies in bed covered by a duvet and wearing socks, because my feet are always cold, and I wear socks to sleep. Even though my sister says sleeping in socks is weird, and no one does it. It was not cold in the room, but the voice had said it was cold, and the voice was not talking about the room. The voice was talking about inside me. It was cold inside me, and when the voice said it, I felt something I had not felt before. A sensation of cold not coming from my skin, or the air, or any external place, but coming from a point inside my chest that was colder than the rest of my body. A cold that felt like an ice cube placed in the palm of your hand. The cold spreading from the point of contact to your fingers and wrist. But this cold spread from a point inside my chest to my ribs and stomach and spine, with the slowness of something settling in, needing time to get used to the place it had decided to stay. I did not sleep that night. I stayed awake in bed with my eyes open and my hands on my chest, feeling the cold coming from inside. A cold that did not leave even when I covered myself with 2 duvets, even when I turned up the heat, even when I put a sweater over my pajamas. The cold did not respond to external temperature because the cold was not external. The cold was her, the voice. What had arrived and said here and said it was cold, and was inside me, occupying a space that had been empty, and now held something not me, something speaking with a voice not mine. The third time the voice spoke more. It was a Saturday morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee and the voice said, "Your kitchen is smaller than mine." It said it with the tone of someone comparing 2 places and noting a difference without complaint, like when you visit someone's house and think their kitchen is smaller than yours, but you do not say it out loud because it would be rude. But the voice said it inside my head with a clarity leaving no room for doubt that what I was hearing was real, and not a product of my imagination or tiredness or any other explanation my rational brain could invent. I answered her. I do not know why I answered her. I do not know why I opened my mouth and said out loud in my empty kitchen at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning the question I asked. I asked her who she was, and the voice answered with a sentence that made me sit down in the kitchen chair with my coffee unfinished and the coffee maker steaming on the counter. The voice said, "I am the one who lived here before." Before what? Before me. The voice said she lived here before me, not in the apartment, not in the kitchen, inside me. The voice said she lived inside my body before I lived inside my body. Said it as if it were normal. Said it as if bodies were houses, and the people living inside them were tenants who moved and were replaced by other tenants. Previous tenants sometimes leaving things behind when they left. Objects in drawers and marks on walls and voices in the heads of new tenants who do not know that before them, there was someone living in the same place. Someone who knew the rooms and the corners and the secrets of the body that is now theirs but was once another's. I asked her what her name was. She did not answer. I asked her when she had lived here. She answered. She said a number. The number was a year. The year was 1873. 1873. 150 years before I was born. The voice speaking inside my head said she had lived inside my body, or inside a body that was in the place where my body now is, or inside something connecting her existence to mine, through a thread crossing 150 years. A thread letting her voice speak to me from a time that no longer existed, and from a life that no longer existed, and from a body that no longer existed, except inside mine, where she had found a cold corner in my chest to stay. The conversations became daily. Every morning the voice spoke to me, spoke while I made coffee and while I dressed and while I walked to work and while I sat at my desk staring at the computer screen pretending to work, when in reality I was listening to a voice telling me things I did not know and could not verify. But that had the texture of real memories, the texture of things someone has lived and tells with the details only lived things have, things not invented. At first the conversations were brief, short sentences, observations about my apartment and my routine, and the differences between her world and mine. She said my kitchen had too much light because in her time, kitchens had small windows, and the light that came in was little and soft, not the aggressive fluorescent light I have on the ceiling. She said the sounds of my world were louder than the sounds of her world, and the noise of cars and sirens and planes bothered her because her ears, my ears, the ears we shared, were not used to so much noise. She said my food had no taste, because the food in my world is processed and packaged and preserved, with substances removing the taste food had in her world, where things were eaten the same day they were picked from the earth or the tree. But over time, the conversations grew longer and more intimate, and more like conversations between two people who live together, share a space, and begin to know each other with the depth that coexistence brings. The voice told me she had been a woman, that she had lived in a house where my building now stands, that the house had a garden with an apple tree producing sour apples no one ate except her, because she liked sour apples, and because taste is personal and does not have to please anyone else. She told me she had 3 children, and all 3 died before her, and that dying after your children is the worst thing that can happen to a person, because the natural order is for parents to die before children, and when the order inverts the world, stops making sense, and what remains after the senselessness is an emptiness nothing fills except time. And time does not fill emptiness, but makes it larger. She told me how she died. Told me on a Wednesday night while I was in bed trying to sleep, and she spoke with the cadence of someone telling a story they have told many times. A story that no longer hurts to tell because pain has become habit, and habit has become routine. And routine has become the way you tell your own death when you have been dead 150 years. And death is just another memory among the memories of a life no longer a life, but a voice inside the head of a stranger sleeping in an apartment where your house with the sour apple tree used to be. She died in the kitchen. Not in the kitchen of my apartment, but in the kitchen of her house that was in the same place where my kitchen is now. She died alone. She died at night. She died in winter with the cold of stone houses that had no heating, warmed by the living room fireplace that did not reach the back rooms, leaving the kitchen with a temperature that put cold in your bones, cold that did not leave your bones until spring came. She told me she felt the cold first and then the pain and then nothing. She told me the nothing was the worst because nothing has no end, and because when you die you expect something after, a place or a light or a voice telling you where to go, and when there is nothing you stay where you are because there is no alternative. And when she died, she did not leave. Did not leave because she had nowhere to go, and because the house where she had lived and where her children were born and where her children had died was the only place she knew. And leaving a place you know to go to a place you do not know is hard to do even when you are alive, and much harder when you are dead, because the dead have no legs to walk elsewhere, no eyes to see where they are going, no hands to open doors leading to new places. She stayed in the house, stayed when the house was torn down, stayed when they built the building on top of the house's foundations, stayed when the building's apartments filled with people who did not know that beneath the foundations there was a kitchen where a woman had died alone one winter night in 1873. She stayed in the place waiting for someone to hear her, and no one heard her for 150 years because the voices of the dead do not sound outside, but inside. And to hear a voice sounding inside, you need to have a silence inside allowing the voice to be heard. And most people do not have silence inside because most people have heads full of noise and thoughts and worries, leaving no space for a voice that has been speaking for 150 years to be heard. But I have silence. I have always had silence inside my head, since childhood. My mother took me to a doctor because she worried I spent too much time quiet, staring into space with the expression of someone listening to things others do not hear. The doctor said I was an introverted child, and introversion is not an illness, but a personality trait. And introverted children need silence, like extroverted children need noise. My mother felt reassured. I kept having silence inside my head, and the silence created a space. And the space attracted something that had been searching 150 years for a space to fit into. The voice told me memories I had forgotten, memories of my childhood stored in my brain but inaccessible, because the brain keeps memories in places consciousness cannot reach, places only activated when something wakes them. The voice woke memories I did not know I had, told me that when I was 4, I fell off a swing and cut my left knee, a cut my mother cleaned with hydrogen peroxide and covered with a bandage printed with bears. I did not remember that fall, did not remember the swing or the cut or the bandage. I called my mother, asked if I had fallen off a swing at age 4. My mother was silent for 5 seconds, then said yes. I had fallen off a swing in the park near our house, and she had cleaned it with hydrogen peroxide and covered it with a bear bandage because it was the only one she had in her bag. She asked why I was asking. I said I had suddenly remembered. I did not tell her it had been told to me by a voice inside my head claiming to be a woman who died in 1873. The voice knew things about me I did not know. Told me that on my first day of school I cried for 20 minutes in the hallway before a teacher took me to the classroom. Told me that at age 7, I hid a cat under my bed for 3 days without my parents knowing. Told me that at age 10, I got lost in a shopping mall and was alone for 40 minutes until a security guard found me sitting behind a planter with my eyes closed and my hands over my ears. All those memories were real. I verified them with my mother one by one, and all were real. Things stored in my brain but invisible to me. Visible to the voice because the voice was inside my brain and had access to parts of me I could not access. And the voice began telling memories not mine. Memories of another life. Memories of a woman who lived in a house with an apple tree in 1873. She told me the smell of sour apples. Told me the sound of wind in the apple tree's branches at night. Told me the texture of garden soil when she put her hands in it to plant seeds in spring. Told me the color of the sky in summer sunsets from the kitchen window where she died. And as she told me these things, I could smell them and hear them and feel them as if they were my own memories, because the voice did not tell them from outside, but from inside. And what comes from inside feels like your own, even when it is not. The voice's memories mixed with mine. At first I could distinguish which were mine and which were hers. Mine had colors and sounds and textures corresponding to the world I live in. A world with cars and phones and concrete buildings. Hers had colors and sounds and textures corresponding to a world that no longer exists. A world with horses and candles and stone houses. But over time, the differences blurred. The colors of her memories came to resemble the colors of mine. The sounds of her world mixed with the sounds of mine. And the textures of her garden soil mingled with the textures of soil in my balcony pots until I did not know if the memory of putting hands in soil was her memory of planting seeds in 1873, or my memory of changing soil in a pot last month. And then the memories stopped being memories and started being something more. Started being desires. The voice stopped telling things that had happened and started saying things she wanted to happen. She wanted me to open the kitchen window because she missed the air. She wanted me to cook apples because she missed the smell of apples cooking in the kitchen. She wanted me to go down to the building entrance and touch the back wall, the wall corresponding to where her house's door had been, to put my hand on the wall and feel the cold of the stone. The same cold her house's stone had, because stones keep cold for centuries, and because the cold of a house torn down 100 years ago remains in the stones beneath the foundations of the building built on top. I did what she asked. I opened the window. I cooked apples. I bought green apples, the sourest I could find at the market, and cooked them with sugar and cinnamon, and the smell filled the kitchen with a sweet, warm aroma that made the voice stay quiet for a while, with the silence of someone enjoying something they have not enjoyed in a long time, not wanting to speak and interrupt the enjoyment. I went down to the entrance and touched the back wall and felt the cold of the stone, colder than stone in a heated entrance should be, resembling the cold I felt in my chest since the night the voice said here for the first time. The stone was cold like stone in an old church, or stone in a basement where sun has never entered. And when I touched the stone The voice sighed inside my head with a sigh that was not a sound but a sensation. The sensation of someone touching something they know and recognize, and that belongs to them, even though 150 years have passed since the last time they touched it. And while my hand was on the wall, the voice said something that made me pull my hand away and run up the stairs and lock the apartment door and sit on the sofa with my hands trembling and the cold in my chest spreading to my arms and legs and the toes inside the socks I wear to sleep. The voice said, "I want to stay." She did not say I want to stay in the apartment. She did not say I want to stay in the building. She said I want to stay in you. In me. Inside me. The voice that had been speaking to me for weeks from a cold corner in my chest wanted to stay inside me forever. Wanted to stop being a voice and start being something more. Wanted to stop speaking and start doing. Wanted to use my mouth to speak with my voice. Wanted to use my hands to touch the things she missed. Wanted to use my eyes to see the world that had changed during the 150 years she had been trapped in the stones of a house that no longer existed. And the cold I felt in my chest expanded into my shoulders and neck and head and legs and feet, and into every corner of my body with the determination of something that has stopped asking permission and started taking what it wants. And the voice stopped being a voice, stopped being words sounding inside my head, became something occupying space, something with weight, something pushing my thoughts aside to make room for its own, something displacing my memories to put its own in their place. Something filling the silence I had always had inside my head with a presence that was not silence, but the opposite of silence. A presence dense and cold and ancient and tired of waiting. A presence that had finally found a place to fit and was not going to leave because the dead who find a place to be do not leave the place they find. And because I had silence inside me. And silence is what the dead need to speak and to stay, and to turn a voice inside a head into something no longer a voice, but a tenant who has decided that my body is her house, and that my house was her house, and that everything mine was hers before being mine and she wants it back.